Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Week in Horror's Front Row. I have the absolute pleasure to be sitting here with producer, writer, director, man of many, many talents, Alexander Watson. Do you prefer Alex or Alexander?
Actually, friends can call me Watson, so please call me Watson.
Watson.
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. It's elementary, sir.
There you
So,
go.
sorry, the
You have to.
bad
You
joke.
have
Yeah.
to.
Well, thank you so much, Watson, for taking
Yeah.
some time out of your incredibly busy schedule to come on here and chat about all things horror, because that's what we talk about
Yes.
here. Um, I'm excited. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to get to predominantly, and I'm going to drop this, but we're going to come back to it. I mean,
Sweet.
you broke through and you just dropped your first feature film,
Mm-hmm.
a horror film
Yep.
called Bundy Manor, and I cannot wait because I literally 2 hours ago I just got done watching it, so it's fresh. It's fresh up
Yeah.
here, so I've got it. But we're going to start. But what I want to do before we dive into that, for all of our listeners out there, I want to go kind of all the way. I want to go back to the beginning because you've been very, very busy as you've been building yourself up to this kind of moment that like filmmakers kind of dream about. Like
Mm-hmm.
they think about that moment when we first get to like put that thing in the can and get that
Mm-hmm.
bad boy out. So
Yeah.
like for everybody, how did you start? What got you into this madness we call this industry?
Well, I mean, let's see. If you want to go way back, I would say that when I was a kid, my parents got divorced, and I would watch my little brother all the time. Had to keep him entertained while my mom worked the night shift at Discover Card. And I, we would play games and stuff or whatever. And then one day, my grandpa updated his camera and gave his old camera to us. And oh boy, me and my little brother, we would make, clay, like stop animation with Legos. We would make horror and Western, but of course, all just takes place in the living room.
Nice.
Yeah, but then, to be like more serious, I didn't really realize how that could just be, I liked the reaction as a kid growing up and having that happen, but then seeing that reaction and just seeing, it was like a puzzle, and like that really got me excited to see like, oh, well, a script is a part of the puzzle, then shooting it's a part of the puzzle, and then obviously editing is a part of
Mhm.
a puzzle. And so what started to happen was is that I was making little funny sketches in my early 20s with my friends, and I loved YouTube. um Never even thought about a feature quite yet. I mean, I was just more like, I want to make people laugh, which is funny that I chose a horror, but as you've seen it, there's some pretty comedic elements in Bundy Manor. So um I but the funny thing was is that not a lot of people knew how to edit. A lot of people knew how to hold a camera, and not trying to diminish the talent that DPs have. Obviously, that's a very very important task. But at least in my corner, not a lot of people knew how to edit, and so I just took it on myself. I looked up YouTube tutorials and just, I started, and slowly but surely I've noticed people wanted to pay me to edit their stuff. And again, that was never a field that I even thought about being a part of. In fact, I wanted to be in the sketches originally, but then I had a lot more fun, yeah, directing and writing, and the stuff behind the camera. And, you know, and then like I said, people started to want to pay me to edit. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something I should look into. And so we started, I come from Salt Lake City, Utah, which is quite a interesting, and then, when you see Bundy Manor, I think a
Okay,
lot of it makes
okay.
sense.
Connective tissue. I see the connective tissue there. Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. That's great.
And there's a lot of weddings in Utah, and and we got in on that game, and we were filming and editing tons of editing videos. Not very fulfilling, but it started to make me a decent amount of money. And then what kind of made me realize, all right, let's go, maybe we could take this even further, is
Mhm.
I edited and directed a documentary about Star Wars fan films, and about how they put thousands of dollars into these fan films, and you can't make any money off them because they're not
Right.
your property. So the angle was, man, look how passionate and awesome these fans are because they're putting so much passion into them that uh yeah. And so I traveled around the United States and filmed that, and then just as I did that, Disney bought Lucasfilm officially. So this dates me back to 2015 or 2014, but we submitted that short, or we submitted a short of that documentary to the Lucas Fan Film Awards that they usually do every year. And that won Audience Choice and Best Nonfiction. Disney ended up offering to buy the whole documentary, and we did. Um, and then that was kind of the first moment where I was like, oh, like this, I'm not just running around with my buddies. Like, I put a lot of heart and, soul into this, and like maybe this could be even more. And so that next year moved out to LA. Editing still has been what's been paying the bills, as I've been I got to work on like um the Exorcist TV show, American Horror Story. Um, let's see, I'm trying to stick to horror, but I also got to do like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Simpsons. Um,
I noticed in your kind of like extensive credits there that you also did some work on Creed 2 as
yes,
well. And yeah, a number of big projects that you got. And that's excellent because I mean, whether or not it's horror or not, getting to that level and working at that level in the industry is always important. It's always fantastic.
yeah,
Plus, it exposes you to so much.
yeah. And if anything, like, because editing is not something that I would like to. I mean, it is my career, but I wouldn't like to pursue it in the long term. But it does give me that opportunity to still work in the industry, and it's pretty flexible. Like you're working from home a lot of the time, which is very nice. And then it just kind of got a lot of experience. And then everyone tells me when I say that my full-time job is editing, but I like to direct and write. A lot of other I'm trying to think of who. Oh yeah, Ari Aster. I got to meet Ari Aster for a little bit,
Nice.
and he mentioned, and he's like, "What do you do?" And this is when I was living in LA, and I was like, "What do you do full time?" And I told him I was an editor, and he was like, "Oh man, that was one thing I wish that I could have in my back pocket," because he does now, but he's like, in my earlier stuff, like shooting to edit. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm sorry, that sounded really egotistical. It's like, okay, great, dude, we get it. You're from LA, cool, good for you, bud. Yeah, but it's just and so that was going for a while, and then quarantine hit, and or sorry, first I had the idea for Bundy Manor, I would say 2 years before quarantine and COVID, and I couldn't get it out of my mind, and so I came out with and how I got the idea for that was and maybe this is moving forward with what you want to talk about, but or maybe it's what you want to talk about. uh, I saw a documentary. It's called like Haunted Houses Across America, or I have to look it up. It was on Netflix for a while, but it was basically just highlighting people who make haunted houses in their backyard.
Right.
And they talked about some extreme haunted houses, like obviously McCamey Manor,
Jamie
and
Manor,
like
yep.
there's one in LA, and there's one in Florida, and then Salt Lake City actually has one. And they're starting to like differentiate, because Russ's haunt, McCamey, I don't want to say Russ, I don't know him. McCamey Manor's haunt is kind of like really pushing the envelope, and so I hear they're trying to say like interactive experiences now instead of extreme haunted houses, just because it's
Trying
been
to, yeah,
interesting.
I see. Trying to kind of like shy away. Have
Yeah,
you had a chance to see Monster Inside?
I have, yes, actually.
Okay,
Fun fact is that three of the people who were in there who get interviewed for that documentary, we actually interviewed before I wrote the script for Bundy Manor. So, and 2 weeks ago, I got to be interviewed by one of them, and that was very intimidating because to know, and they've seen the movie, and obviously they've lived through the real terror of what it's
right.
like to work with somebody like that. And so I was very nervous and wanted to make sure I get, someone, their stamp of approval, because obviously it's, dramatized in some aspects, but I wanted to make sure that someone who, because there are movies that are similar to Bundy Manor, where the haunted house that turns, I mean, I got to be careful, but I mean, you understand, it's a haunted house that turns out more is going on. That's
Right.
being pretty vague. Like, that's happened before. And but I really wanted to have like a face, because usually it's like, either someone with a mask, or like, and me coming from Utah, Ted Bundy is, I've been heard about Ted Bundy my entire life growing up. And so the reason we went with Bundy Manor is, obviously it's the name of the haunt, but he named it because I think he has a fascination,
Kind of
obviously, with
emulates that character, right?
yeah.
And
So
and knowing that, and I, yeah, we'll definitely dive into it. But seeing
sure.
the in the characterization how that comes across, especially in interacting with female characters, especially when he switches, it definitely kind of emulate. I
Mm,
would say mirrors what we know about that particular serial killer.
yeah.
Now it's fascinating, and I really, and also, I mean, I know I may be getting ahead of myself. I really dug the
Please.
idea, because as far as like extreme haunt films go, there are a handful out there, but there's not a lot.
Mhm.
So that really focus on that. I mean, I think I can think of like The Houses October Built, think of Haunt that released on Shutter, and then there's
Mhm.
the documentary. But you're right. You're right. What you pointed out is that they all focus, all those characters, they have masks, and at
Mhm.
one point maybe the masks are taken off, but it's not. But the focus is the identityless villain is what they are.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing there's no human aspect to connect with. But in
Yeah.
yours, there absolutely is, which I found really a new and very interesting tack to take. That
Mm.
this villain is on display, or maybe what we see as the mask. I kind of dug that. Like I really,
Yeah.
it kind
Oh,
of
I
flipped the script a little
I
bit.
like how I like how you put that. Yeah, what we see is the mask. And yeah, when I was writing it, I kind of had that, thought of like, hey, do we just like make it entirely the family's perspective, and like we don't see Rob really at all, and like we just kind of keep it mysterious, or like, but like what was really interesting to me was like, I don't know, there's just such a story here of like the dynamic between, these two entities like going at it. Because like with that documentary I watched, they interviewed neighbors,
Hmm.
and like it was so fun to see them be like, some of them were like, oh, he's great, I love when they make those, and like I love hearing the screams, and oh, it's just them, doing their thing over there. And and not really understanding some of them, because some of them they're just like dressing up in chainsaws, and that's a line from the movie. um some of them, I would argue, are on the border of torturing people, and
Yeah.
but they're volunteering, so it's like it's a weird gray area. So it's like, how far is too far, or how easy is it to step over that line? And like, yeah, yeah, just a lot of questions kept popping up in my head, and I was more excited to be like, "Ooh, let's have him actually be a character." So,
Nice.
yeah.
Now going back a little bit, because you mentioned during the pandemic, and the 2019 to 2021, that entire period of time, like it hit everybody. Like
Hmm.
from small timers to all the way up to the big time, it hit everybody. In fact, this podcast is a result of that,
Oh,
because
nice.
all of us as filmmakers, we were kind of like looking for an outlet. Wanted to do something, and we had a lot of
Yeah.
time on our hands. So we're like, why not do a podcast? Because
Hmm.
we love this to talk about it. So we all found different ways to kind of like, kind of break out, because there was no work to be had, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I myself am a writer. I was writing up a storm, but couldn't do anything with him. So I
Yeah.
figured we'd do the podcast. And so when you were faced with that, when that hit,
Hmm.
like, how did you persevere through that?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, it was so I had the outline, but then I dropped it for a while, and then once the pandemic hit, I man, I was losing my mind. And like, I don't know if you're live in a populated place, but here in LA, that you just couldn't do anything pretty much. So I think what happened is like I was kind of going through, um all my different scripts and stuff, and then I just remembered Bundy, and I was just like, oh, like I have time now.
All of a
Like,
sudden, it's like, oh wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And like one thing I love to do with my scripts is read throughs. So originally I thought like, oh, okay, well, how about I finish this script or at least a draft? And what if I get my buddies together? Because any excuse to get friends together over Zoom at that
Yeah.
time, was ideal. So I pushed through, and like I that was a big motivator, is like, hey, this would just be really fun to read with my buds. And then um another thing that really got me motivated by it is that my friends owned the theater that we filmed in. And so I was like, oh, okay, that would be really cool location. So like I started to write that in, and I started to like, because we did film it in Utah. And so um like that's a big thing I would say, this definitely, is that it's always good if you're going to shoot something on your own for a low budget, which is what we did, definitely right around, places you have access to. And
Right.
so that was another motivating factor during that time, is like, oh, once I can go film this with my buds. And so a lot of them make cameos in there. Um, and yeah, ultimately we wanted to read it together. And then it just kind of started to make sense of like things were kind of starting to open up once I finished the script, and then Kickstarter came into mind. Uh, and yeah, we raised all the funds through Kickstarter, which was very hard.
Okay, yeah. So that was a big thing that when I learned about that. So two things, like, and there's kind of an interconnected question there
Yeah,
because many filmmakers talk about potentially, using crowdfunding in order to get, whether it's Indiegogo or Kickstarter or something else of that
yeah.
nature. But obviously, crowdfunding campaigns are extraordinarily difficult. I've heard that
Hmm.
time and time again that many people will try to do it, and then is either they can't really figure it out, or they do something wrong and it never takes off, so nothing ever comes to fruition. So
Yeah.
walk us through that. Like, did you have someone who knew what they were doing going in, or did you just kind of have to like muddle your way through it to
Oh,
success?
sure. Yeah, I mean, so the big thing is like, yeah, if we were gonna do it, I wanted to do it right. And so I reached out to my buddy Shane Hartline. He's a creator on TikTok, and he's also been on some TV shows, and he's also crowdfunded his own films. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, dude, like, how are you doing it? Because like, if I want to do this, because I've done some like crowdfunding before Bundy, but like they were very little. Like I would do a short for $1,000, right? And I'd be like, and that was on GoFundMe, and I'd just be like, hey, throw us a couple, couple whole $10 or something. But this was going to be obviously much bigger, because we were going for 60K, I think, or 65. I think it's been that long. 60K, I think. Um, so I went to him and asked him, and he pointed me to actually I didn't even know this existed, but a professional Kickstarter. His name is the Kickstarter guy. That is
Nice.
his actual name. So shout out to him. Um, and like, but still, just having him didn't mean that we were going to be successful,
Right.
because it took hard work. And like I got a team together of very like-minded people who wanted to help get this movie made, who weren't down to post every single day, who were down to get out there and just like get as many people who can get eyes on it as possible. And like I think one thing that people don't kind of shy away and get afraid of is like, I reached out to everybody, like my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, every single person, and like most of the people on my team did as well. And like I think people get nervous of that, and I understand. Like no one likes to ask for money, but like
Right.
I don't think what people realize is like when you're chasing after your dream, I don't think I ever got a no. Like maybe people didn't answer back, but like and if people said like they couldn't, it was more like, oh hey, like I'm super respectful of what you're doing, I can't right now or whatever. um but I would say majority said yes, and majority, and some people who I didn't even like haven't spoke to in a while, they said yes. And so um it, it, I think a lot of what filmmakers fail at with Kickstarter is a not filming a Kickstarter video, which I think is insane. You have to have a Kickstarter video, and you should have a kick-ass, or sorry, can we swear? I don't know if we
No,
can
you
swear.
can swear. Oh yeah, fuck yeah, we're
Okay.
salty. We're salty.
Okay. Hell
We're salty as
yeah.
fuck here.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Yeah, you really got to have a kick-ass video. And like we didn't have anything that was like insane, but like it was like I would say it was pretty good. And then um your page has to look good, but just use your talents. Like, me as an editor, I would just like type things in Premiere and then throw them into the Kickstarter to make it look dope, like the titles and stuff. And um yeah, and we were very lucky. Like we got on the front page of Kickstarter. We got like a $5,000 donation, which from someone we didn't even know. And like, yeah, it was really great. And honestly, I kind of ended up liking it. I would love not to do it again, but I'm down to do it again. If for the next movie that we're currently working on, we do have some like fun coals in the fire. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, but with Kickstarter, I would totally be down to do Kickstarter again. And I will say our distributor, because what we did is, and this might be getting a little too like to the weeds if you're okay with it, but
Oh, but yeah, feel free. One.
okay. Well, so we didn't have it where we had it where you could watch the movie once we finished the film. Like our backers could watch it for like we had like a week window. But what our distributor loved when they found out about the movie is they were like, "Oh, like you have an audience that doesn't own the film," and we were like, "No, we don't." And so they were like, "That is great." And that was the Kickstarter guy. To be fair, that's what he said is like your distributors are going to love it much more if like the audience you've curated is going to be there to support throughout, and they have, and I can't thank them enough to who have bought it, who've now it's on Tubi. It finally came out on Tubi. We had some hiccups, but it did, and so they can watch it for free if they want to. So yeah.
That's so cool. And and also on Plex, because that's where I caught it. I
Yes,
caught it on my
Plex.
Plex account. So
I keep forgetting about Plex. I don't know too much about it.
everybody don't forget about Plex. But if you have Plex or if you have Tubi, either one, you can definitely catch Bundy Manor there. Now
Yep.
it's so going into it as far as crowdsourcing goes, because I've looked at it before. I've never myself have gone hard into
Yeah.
into a crowdfunding campaign. But I would say like the takeaway on that for burgeoning filmmakers who want to try and crowdfund something is definitely have a dedicated team that
Hmm.
can focus on what is necessary to do this, and definitely try and get in touch with somebody who has been successful before and
Yeah.
knows what they're doing and can give you the best advice possible.
Yeah, and I'm open to like the Kickstarter guy, yeah, you can hire him to be more hands-on, but if you just have a few questions, like I'm always open for it. You can hit me up on like Waddy McFly on my Instagrams, and not just Kickstarter, but just filmmaking in general. Like I'm always down to chat. And one last thing I'll say real quick, or we could talk as much as you want about Kickstarter, but one thing just kind of going off with your saying is like
Mhm.
also of course we wanted to go for like 300, 400K or 500K, 600K. But one thing the Kickstarter guy said is like, hey, go for something you can get. And so 60K was something that we were like, we kind of just figured out with like our team and like, hey, this is like the bare minimum. And then we ended up getting 64. So like, hey, not
Nice.
bad. And we did have to find funds after, but but that was more just a learning experience with like,
Post
yeah,
production and
post.
such.
Yeah, because like
Yeah, yeah.
we
It's
thought
always post. It
it
always gets
is,
you in post.
and it's like I thought I could do a lot of it because I did edit this one. I hope in the future that I can hire another editor just because you're too in it, in my opinion. I know Kevin Smith edits his movies, but like I feel like I'm too in it, and I would love another person's perspective next time. But yeah, and like coloring and sound
Mhm.
mixing and yeah,
That's a shout out to our co-host Johnny O, because Johnny O, that's what he does. He does editing,
nice,
sound engineering, coloring, and all that
hell
stuff.
yeah,
Because he's very proud of what he does. So
nice,
so
good.
he's just kind of like, yeah, that's see what I did there. See that balancing? That's
Yeah.
me. That's me. I'm like,
Hey, that's good. That's good. You got to keep those as your best friend for when you do your
mm.
films. So,
We try to keep them happy, you know.
Yeah.
We really do. We throw them a bone every once in a while. So
Awesome.
going into Bundy Manor, you know,
Mhm.
you've got it, you're running, and okay. So first and foremost, really good story there that you had going. I loved like what I said before, like he kind of flipped the script on that idea
Thank
and
you. Yes.
brought some new interesting concepts into
Mhm.
that kind of like new kind of subgenre.
Thank
And
you.
I really hope with the popularity of the documentary about McCamey Manor coming out that it really boosts your film. So yeah,
Mm.
fingers crossed for that you
Yeah.
get some kind of like cross interest there. Now,
Yeah.
but I got the distinct impression and from watching this film and I don't want to compare it, but it's very similar to the idea of a movie. I got hints of red. You brought up Kevin Smith, and it's interesting because I got hints of kind of a red state mentality going on,
Sure, sure.
just on the undercurrent. Now, I'm not saying that the two are similar, but because you mentioned Salt Lake City, you mentioned Utah, you
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
your influences, I got the distinct impression that there was some personal stuff that you were saying in this film.
Yes.
That's my impression.
No, absolutely. And like I don't know how far you want to go down that hole, but I yeah, I grew up in a red state
Mhm.
and I a lot of trauma. I'm trying to be very vague because I don't we don't need to get too crazy. But a lot of trauma I've experienced, right? And no offense again if you're religious or anyone else is religious, but a lot of the times, a lot of answers to my problems were, just pray it away. Just pray and everything's going to be fine. Or, I had a lot of people who would interject into our lives and use God as a way to, shove their way into our issues. Exactly what our main antagonist does with this family is he kind of sees a struggle and he uses God as a way to kind of like
That
wedge
that
himself
that
in there.
passive aggressive kind
Hmm.
of like yes, those little moments just kind of like, really, dude?
Yeah.
Like there's a thing, it's like, really? It's like, is that, but I thought it
Yes.
was fantastic because you get the dynamic to the family. It's kind of like, well, that would, like to the younger generation, that was kind of cringe. To the
Yeah.
parents, like, that was kind of inappropriate, but to them, it's like blinders on. And I love the
Hmm.
way that dynamic and the fact that they're sitting there like everything's cool. Yeah, this is totally normal. It's like this is great. I thought that was
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think in us like coming from a state with small towns and a very specific religious influence, blinders are on just naturally, and I think
Yeah.
that's interesting. And I don't want to like bash any religions. Believe what you want to believe. Um, but yeah, I have, and I will also say that Ted Bundy was Mormon and like he for a short time, I don't know how much he really believed in it or whatever. I don't know him. But he was, and he went to church and like uh a lot of people trusted him. And I think a big reason in Utah why a lot of people trust him was because of that. And so it's interesting though with Utah is we've so we, I haven't told anybody this exclusive for Week in Horror, but we
Excellent.
we tried to obviously submit Bundy Manor into a few film festivals in Salt Lake or in Utah, like all the whole state, and we were getting in film festivals in California, in Dublin, in all across the state, really, and like we could not get a single one in Utah. And again, I I don't want to like think that our movie is so you've seen it. It's not it's a low budget fun movie.
Yeah.
But I never will, think that I have some like privilege. Privilege is a big deal in Utah, and I never feel like I'm privileged. Like, oh, I have to be in a film festival. But it was weird to see like it get into none, and so I was like, that is interesting. Well, one day I get an email
Ah.
from a friend, and he's like, hey, dude, I gotta call you, and I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, so all not all, but a good chunk of the film festivals in Utah meet together to try and like promote each other's films and like not like step on each other. Well, apparently they met and decided that Bundy Manor was not to be admitted into any film festivals. And when my friend, who he's a part of that committee, he does like, he just volunteers. He's not like ahead of anything. He was like, "Why are we banning Bundy Manor?" And they said, "Well, it's because it's an anti-religious film, and we can't have that. We can't have that."
Wow.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so fascinating. So yeah, not, and I don't think that any horror festival, because there's a great one in St. George that I hope to get into one day. They are not a part of it, so like, please separate from them. But yeah, that was interesting to learn, and I'm just like, wow, okay,
It just goes to
interesting.
show politics plays into it. At
Yeah,
almost every level, politics plays into it. That is wild because
yeah,
while I understand that the villain has this aspect to themselves, and
yeah,
I don't want to
yeah,
spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen it, but I personally, in my opinion, would not have taken an anti-religious track from this. Just
yeah,
that the villain happens to be this. Like religious
yeah,
motivation is a thing. It's an excellent narrative standpoint. It can be both a positive thing. What? It's only acceptable if it's a freaking Pure Flix film and all the heroes are of a particular slant.
right,
That's just silly.
yeah, yeah,
But I'm glad that you got in other places, and that's an interesting
yeah.
thing to do. So for all you people out there listening to this after the fact, if you're making a movie and your bad guy's a religious guy, don't count on Utah.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And now
Yeah,
I'm going to get
it's
an
so funny.
email from people in Utah, be like, "Hey, you can't be saying this about our festivals here, man." It's
Oh
like,
man.
hey. So that is so in writing, because you wrote the film as well, and
Yeah.
obviously a lot of personal, I say a lot of personal experience, like takeaways went into that film and informed the
Mhm.
movie itself.
Yeah.
I myself, and I know a lot of people out there, but I personally really, really love when you can feel that personal edge within that film, within the film itself.
Yeah.
When the director and the writer, especially when they're the same person, but when they're saying something personal, when there's like, yeah, this is a part of. Obviously, every product is a part of you, but when
Mhm.
it's really from you in that respect, and I've always loved. That's why Chasing Amy is my all-time
Ooh,
favorite, of like one of my top
absolutely.
favorite films, because it's
Nice. I
deeply
love that we're
personal.
talking about Kevin Smith a lot in this podcast because I love him. So
And it just the idea that that's always stuck with me when
yeah.
I was back in film school, and that one always about going back all the way back to 1996.
Mhm.
That always got me, was like I needed to have something to say. It's like the
Mhm.
whole like Holden problem. The problem with Holden is he
Yep.
said something and then he didn't have any, so he was looking for something to say. He had nothing to say, which is why they were doing
Mhm.
Blunt Man and Chronic. And I
Mhm.
love it when I see a movie from a director where they have something to say.
Mhm.
And as far as a writer goes, as far as the writing experience and punching out a screenplay, once you've got the basics down,
Mhm.
how would you compare the process by when you've got that personal thing to say? Others, because I noticed that with Star Wars Journey of a Fan Film,
Yeah.
a lot of your personal heart went into that, and
Yeah.
that's why those hit so well.
Mhm.
How would you say? Would you say it's a little bit different when you're working on something that is just this is just a project?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a big issue for some of my first scripts. Some of my first scripts that I would write, features I would write did not feel like me at all, or I was just trying to copy something
Right. Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
and it did not feel like me at all. And I would like submit for like feedback and stuff, and I think that's important with any aspect of film, is always try and get feedback with your scripts and stuff. And yeah, with Bundy, it was a little different as far as like, I personally haven't tortured people before. At least I hope I don't think have tortured people before. But what I have, is like deception, obviously religious experiences that I've had, those family issues that the two lead characters have of the family, like that's stuff that I've struggled with a lot. And the daughter of the family, Ash, she's this black sheep who loves horror films. I mean, that was me growing up. Like I literally lived in this like super religious town and just loved Jaws, and I just
Oh,
loved,
you're the
you
kid from
know.
Tenacious D.
Yeah, there you go. Yep, in a town called Kickapoo. That
Yeah.
was me, man. Uh, and so yeah, I think that's the thing, and I don't want to like. I think important thing is like, hey, don't, just because you love horror, you love sci-fi, you've never been to space means you can't write a sci-fi film. I think what makes movies unique is when you do tell them through your POV, and like you do tell them using your experiences. Those are the kind of stuff that, like, once I finally started doing that, that's when I would get notes back being like, "Whoa, I've never thought of this before," or "Whoa, I've never, or I know exactly what you're feeling because I've gone through this and I had an emotional connection because I have that shared experience." And so I've only experienced positives when, like, I I may not know exactly, like, to a T what this family has gone through, although I did go through an extreme haunted house.
Mm.
Just I had to, I mean, it wasn't like McCamey Manor or the one in Florida. I need to get that name because people are just going to think I'm only talking about McCamey Manor, but we're going to get it all the time. Um, but yeah, I went through the one in Salt Lake because I just felt like that was. I mean, I wanted to have an opinion and express it without just
Mhm.
watching it, if that made sense.
That
So
one in Florida, you're talking about Screamageddon?
I think that's what it was, is
Okay.
Screamageddon. So yeah, I interviewed some of them as well. They were interested. They weren't super pumped about what the subject matter was, but I don't know. I don't think they're a Russ situation. I keep saying Russ like I know him. I don't know why. I think it's because I watched the documentary and
It's
now
like it's like
I'm
it's like we know him intimately at this point. We're really
yeah.
it's kinda like, "Oh, yeah, Russ, yeah, I know all about
Yeah.
him." So,
Exactly.
okay, so it's fantastic the Bundy Manor has gotten distribution. It's out there for everybody to watch. I hope everybody gets an
Woo.
opportunity to see it, to take the opportunity to watch this one. There's
Yes.
fantastic, parts all throughout. You will feel the heart that comes through it. I definitely guarantee that people will dig that one for a while until, and I don't know how much you could talk about it because I saw it coming up, but you have
Uh-huh.
a new project in the works. And
Yes.
if can I say anything about it? I
I
don't want to
think
introduce.
so.
I don't want to introduce it because you have a new project coming out called Demonetize.
Yes. We can talk about it, and it's fine. We can
Only as
talk
much as
about
you
it.
want, because I don't want to spoil, but and I don't know if you're like, you're trying to keep things under wraps. I don't want to ruin anything, but
I mean,
are you,
I can't talk about casting. That's where we're at,
uh,
and talking about certain people. Again, oh, I got to be careful. A
was
lot
there
of
okay?
exciting things.
Was there anything as far as that's an interesting thing. As far as the casting process for
Mm,
Bundy Manor, given the subject matter, was there anything
mm.
like how was the casting experience in that one? When you hand them that side, hey, can you go ahead and read
Yeah.
this? I, how did that play out?
Well, thankfully, I think a lot of people got what I was trying to say with it, and like you're saying, and I did a good view. I will say, I gotta be a little vague, but we did have an actress back out 3 days before shooting.
Oh,
And she didn't quite give us an answer why, and it was kind of yeah, I gotta be vague. But Julie, she plays the uh Lissa, so she plays
Mhm.
the mom of the family. Yeah, she literally got cast 3 days before shooting and had to come down,
Wow.
and she just knocked it out of the park and had to learn the entire script. And she backed the Kickstarter, so she knew what she was getting into. Um, I will say it was quite, because I always want my movies to be diverse. Um, that was really hard to do in Utah.
I imagine, definitely.
Yeah, especially because we filmed in a very small town, Cedar City, which is like 4 hours from Salt Lake, which is getting more diverse to be up to be real. But um, yeah, that was the biggest casting, is like, and Ilara, the little girl, she flew all the way out from Alabama just to be in the movie, which was very nice.
Very
So
cool.
yeah.
I can imagine trying to cast in Salt Lake and be like, "Oh my god, like the market for white shirts and black ties is insane here. What is going on?"
Exactly, dude. Exactly.
So, and that was a curious thing. As far as the Kickstarter goes, I was curious about this.
Yeah,
I guess the TikTok segments, the individuals recording themselves. Was that
yeah.
a perk that you offered as part of it? Were those people who funded, or were those all cast?
I wish I would have thought of that, because that would have been a great idea. And maybe if we do this next one, maybe we should do something similar. But no,
I
what
was like, that would have
happened
been a
is,
great perk. It was kind of
I
like,
know that's a
I
good
wonder if these
idea.
people like it's like a Kickstarter perk. If you give so much, we'll give you a deal to record. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm doing this, and then
so
we'll use it.
smart. I might need to steal that. Yeah, they were actually all improv friends. So I've done improv a long time, and all my improv friends have kind of like moved out from LA. And so I was like, man, it'd be kind of cool to like, this was kind of later on because like I didn't write in the script. There was like a line of like of the collage of people talking about it, but I'd never had dialogue for them. It was just like we see like a collage of people talking about Bundy Manor on, their phones. But when I reached out to my improv buddies, because I had one in Chicago, I had one in New York, I had one, like those little markers are real for the most part.
Mm.
Like they are saying roughly where they're at. There's a few because we have a few uh influencers that have quite a huge following. Those we changed to keep their safety. But I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, here's what you know about Bundy Manor, or Rob Jorgensen is our villain. I want you to be against it. That's all I would give them. And then they went and improvised and then came back. And man, and so originally like what you see at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
where there's just like one or two quick lines and then we move on. That's all it was going to be, but some of them just knocked it out of the park. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can get them again to talk about after, right? Now that Rob now that they know what happens. Catching myself. Now that they see what happens at the climax, like how they feel about it. And then, that's kind of another thing that I wanted to say is like sometimes when we idolize people, again, we put on these
Yeah.
blinders, and whether they have legit proof that they've done some awful things, they kind of keep pushing forward. And hey, that could be said about anybody. I know a lot of people are thinking I'm talking about someone specific, but that could be said about anybody. So,
That's so very, very true.
yeah,
There's
but
a comment. Horror is commentary. That is what
there you
horror is. Yeah,
go. That's my
absolutely.
favorite. That's my favorite horror anyway. So, but yeah, specifically, I got to shout out Jordan Todd Brown. He's the one who said, and it was completely improvised. He said, and that's what that's what I'm saying. That's why it's hard to be a white dude today. And I just thought that was so funny. It just killed me. So, yeah,
Excellent. So, but demonetize
yes,
coming up. What can you say about? Because I'm intrigued because
yeah,
I've read the premise.
cool,
Dealing with internet personalities and
yeah,
influencers and such, and of course I myself run my own personal YouTube channel, and
yeah.
I do commentary and stuff, which is fascinating because I actually do like commentary on theist arguments and like theist videos. That's
Hey,
my
all
personal
right.
stuff. And
Nice. Okay.
so that's why it kind of hit it. That's why your film kind of hit. I was like, oh, okay, we can get there.
Cool. I might
And
have to talk to
so,
you more then. Get
and
some input from you.
and then so I saw demonetized. I was like, aha, because I'm very familiar with that one, and especially with a film like, I don't know if you had an opportunity to see it. It's a film called oh,
Deadstream.
it's Deadstream. Yes, thank you very much. I was just thinking
Yeah.
about that. I was watching that. I was like, I feel this man's pain because sometimes people freak out when you comment on them. They hit you with the
Yeah.
DMCA, and you're kind of like, "What are you doing? It's fair use." So
Right.
when I hear demonetized, my mind goes all kinds of places.
Nice.
What if any can you talk about? Do you have in
Yeah.
store for us?
I could talk. There's some stuff that we've put publicly on. Like you said, you've seen it. So, yeah. So yeah, I worked for how I came. So the story is about two ex ghost hunters. So think like, Ghost Adventurers or the TV show Ghost Hunters or whatever.
Jason
They
Hawes.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Sorry, cough.
Oh yeah, excuse you. But yeah, they've been off the air for a while and they're trying to get back into the limelight, right? And through a series of events, they find out that social media influencers, for some reason, really trigger ghosts, and ghosts really draw and get stronger with them around. And let's just say it becomes a massacre. So,
As
um,
Eugene likes, as Eugene, my co-host, likes to say, shit gets real.
shit gets real. There you
Shit
go, dude.
gets real.
Yes. And how we kind of like thought about that, and there's a lot more to it, but again, I have to be pretty vague. Uh, so when I first moved out here, one of my first editing jobs, I worked for, before I did all that fancy schmancy stuff. I worked for some of the biggest influencers around. So Jake and Logan Paul, the Dobre brothers, Cody Co. I like him a lot more. Uh, yeah. So, and like one time I was editing a video for the Dobre brothers, which, man, if you ever want to just feel the deepest cringe, go watch their content. But they do every once in a while these horror themed videos, and like it'll be like, my brother found a possessed doll in the woods, and so we brought it to our mansion. And then like they bring the doll to the mansion, and then like they just scream at it and throw it around and pretend it's like trying to get them. Or one time they had like, my brother is possessed, and like all they did was just put white makeup on him, and then he chased him around their mansion. And I was just like, man, what would these dudes actually do in like a, a legit like horror situation? And I have not seen Deadstream, only because we literally finished the script, and then like 3 months later the trailer came out, and so I was like, oh, like, and again, respect to them, I already know what it's about. And
Mm.
I mean, there's already takes, like we have 4 or 5 influencers, and I know he has just himself, but like still, from what I've heard, it's excellent. So I can't wait to watch it.
Oh,
But
it's funny. It's funny as shit. Yeah, I
oh, I
think
can't
you're gonna
wait.
love it. If you have experience with dealing with internet
Yeah.
personalities
Oh,
and on that side of the can, it's gonna knock you out of your chair. I was
awesome.
laughing my ass off because I felt it. I felt it so personally. It was like, I feel this man's
Nice.
pain.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, I definitely, once we get this one off the ground and rolling, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah, so fast, because I just want to make
Mm,
sure that I respect his vision,
right.
him and his wife, because they both created that
Mm.
together. I want to make sure I respect his vision, and not, make sure it's its own thing, and yeah, make sure mine's its, my own thing. And so, and yeah, and not that there's anything wrong with that, because like literally, what is it called? Totally Killer,
Totally
that
killer. Yeah,
Amazon,
on Amazon.
like
Yep.
there's a very similar movie about someone traveling back in time to stop a killer. Like that's,
Hmm.
we're all just having fun in this playground. So,
Oh, absolutely.
uh,
There was
yeah.
a. I mean, I myself have spoken with directors at times, and it's weird how oftentimes the kind of like creative ether, for lack of a better term, the kind of creative ether
Mm,
can be dipped into, for the same thing by multiple
yeah.
people. And like I spoke with the director of a movie called Night Things a
Mm,
couple years back. There
mhm.
was a Night Things was this movie, a little low budget indie film, really really good for what he was working with, and
Yeah.
he really knew how to stretch a dollar. Like he maximized it out. We're talking like
Nice.
sci-fi, horror shit, and that came out in 2011. And then like in 2000, or sorry, that was like 2010. 2021 comes around, and
Uh-huh.
I get to see the show From with Harold
Mm,
Perrineau that's over on MGM right now. And so I saw the
yeah.
first season of that. I was like, holy shit. This is so I literally like emailed the guy. I was like, hey, dude, have you seen this show that's out
Yeah.
right now? And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, so we just talked about Night Things on the show. I think you need to
Uh-huh.
check out the show. And he's like, okay, cool. Thanks for the recommendation. Two
Yeah.
weeks later, I get an email back. What the fuck? I was like, dude, my mind was blown. It's like so, it's
Oh,
like, and it was wild how that happens. And so I
yeah.
love that we as a community, as because it is, while there are many of us, it's a small family by comparison.
Yeah.
And our love for the genre allows us to play in the same sandbox. And sometimes we can
Yeah.
tap those ideas and we can run with them and do fun things with them. And so
Yeah.
I think we are kind of forgiving in the horror community about that. So we allow says, hey man, you see an idea, but fucking grab it and run with it,
Yeah.
take that football down to the goal line.
Yeah, and I just think with that, like, I just think there's just no, like, I'm not going to be the last person who makes a horror movie about extreme haunted houses like that. Like, and who knows, maybe in a couple years, MGM or Amazon or someone's going to make something. I mean, they made the documentary, but I don't know. Or no, that was Hulu. Sorry,
That was
Hulu
who,
made the
yeah.
documentary. But yeah, it's just like I know filmmakers who get so bummed about like they have a script that they're writing and then a movie comes out. Like I had a friend who wrote a similar script to It Follows, didn't know It Follows existed. And then I was just kind of like, oh, it kind of reminds me. And I was trying to say a compliment, right? I was like, oh, it reminds
Right.
me of It Follows. And then they watched it and they're like, oh man, it's just too similar. And I'm like, dude, just like make it like you're saying, people are much more forgiving and people are like, and as long as they stick to themselves, right, and tell their story through, like we were talking about earlier, like no one is you, and
Right.
you just need to go and just tell that story. And now if you steal somebody's story and copy it word from word, that's a different issue, but every
Unless,
filmmaker borrows from each other, so
unless you're Rob Zombie and you just want to reshoot Devil's Rejects, call it Three from Hell, you can do that all day long. So
there it
I'm sorry, I
is.
got to get that dig in because whatever. But
Yeah.
it's funny that you bring this up because I ran into a similar situation. I know this, I the story is so well. I try and nutshell it
Yeah,
so I'm not eating up all the time. So people are like, why is
all good.
Jail talking all the time?
Oh.
In 2014, I think this was back. Yeah, it was back 2014. I was really trying to. I was getting into writing scripts. And I'd done some shorts, and I decided I wanted to try handwriting a feature. And I envisioned this concept about, and I was like, okay, what would be really cool? So I
Yeah.
wanted a monster movie, and I hadn't seen a monster movie in a while. And I
Sick.
love eco horror, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a movie with a giant alligator in it because I haven't seen one of
Nice.
those in a while.
Yeah.
Rogues sucked. Primeval sucked. I want
Uh-huh.
to see something solid. So
Uh-huh.
so I wrote this feature about this young black woman who lives in Louisiana, and she's in a car wreck with her parents, and her parents die, and
Yeah.
she's paralyzed. And so
Okay.
she inherits the family estate, which is like one of those really, really old kind of like plantation homes that are in the South Louisiana.
Yeah.
And she's contemplating, ending it, because in her parents are gone, she's all alone, she's paralyzed, giant house sucks.
Yeah.
And then she decides there's an incoming hurricane. And so the reason I got this idea was
Oh.
because Katrina, was
Yeah.
there. I was kind of like, oh, that'd be fascinating. And so I was
Yeah.
imagining this girl in this situation where she literally decides to, like end it, and
Mhm.
she doesn't evacuate when the sirens are going off, and she's going to let the storm take her. So the storm
Sure.
comes in, the water start coming in, and in washes a 15-foot alligator.
Whew. Yeah.
And what then
Terrifying.
follows is essentially a two-hander between her and the alligator as she fights her way up the house as the waters are rising, and
Ah,
finally finds that will to live, and like that, and that was the
that's
movie.
fun. Yeah.
And so I imagine like Shaniqua Martin Green playing the character, and
Ooh.
I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
that because I saw her in Walking Dead, and I was like, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I write it, and I'm really proud of it, and I start
Nice.
shopping. I start shopping it around.
Mhm.
No one will bite.
Mhm.
Pun intended. But anyway, no one will bite my alligator script. It's too expensive. Shooting Louisiana is hard. You're talking about a big house, talking about big water effects. This is
Uh-huh.
millions and millions of dollars. You've never done anything this big. No one's gonna jump on this. So I'm like, crap. But I
Interesting.
shopped it to a lot of contacts that I had in the industry.
Yeah.
Nobody buys, so it goes in the shelf.
Yeah.
5 years later,
Oh no.
out of the blue, I get a
Yeah.
call from a friend of mine. His name's Gabriel. He's a filmmaker that I worked with previously. I get a call
Yeah.
from Gabriel. He's like, "Hey, Dave." He's like, "Hey, JL." I'm like, "Gabriel." I was like, "What's going on?" "Hey, man, did you see the trailer?" I'm like, "What
Uh-huh.
trailer?" I'm like, "I'm in my office. What trailer?" He's like, and he sent me the link, and I was like, "All right, let me look at this link." And it was the trailer for Crawl.
Crawl. Uh-huh. Oh no.
And I'm not going to say
Uh-huh.
that I can neither confirm nor deny that my script somehow made it from Texas to Pennsylvania, which is
Oh
where those guys
no.
who made that deal was where those brothers live. And I was like,
Yeah.
but I shopped that script to a lot of people, and
Sure.
I don't know if I'm not going to say that that's what happened, but I now know how it kind of like how if it
Mm.
is, we both tapped the creative ether and we kind of got that same thing. Only
Mhm.
they chose to go white girl with her dad, and I was kind of like, I thought mine was more poignant, but it happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild when you see that take place.
Oh yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I ate up a whole bunch of time with
No,
my
no, no.
rambling
I love
story.
it.
So,
Yeah, I love it. Honestly, too, though, I hope that I think that's still fascinating, and I still think that's relevant, and I hope like it still feels different enough that you know I still
I
hope you
will
can make
shoot
that
it if I get the
someday.
money. Yeah, if I get the money,
Yeah,
I'm going to shoot that motherfucker. I will.
yeah,
I don't care if
nice.
there's like 5 more. There's another alligator film just fucking came out recently,
Yeah,
and I'm gonna, or I think it's about to come out, and I'm still gonna shoot. If I get the
yeah.
money, I'm gonna shoot it. I'm gonna try and cash Shaniqua.
And I'm a
Shaniqua, if you ever
sucker.
hear this, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for creature features. I'll watch any creature feature, and I would love to write a creature feature someday if I can. Yeah, if I could figure that out. So I guess I kind of think about, well, no, those are that's paranormal. I guess you could. I guess you have to be distinct as far as that goes. But yeah, with demonetize, like I'm so excited to get back, and like it hurts at times because it's like you know once you finish your first feature, I didn't you say you've done features before as well? I can't remember if you
Well,
said.
I've worked on a couple, but
Awesome.
predominantly I've worked on a lot of shorts.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. You so you get it. Like as soon as you
Mhm.
finish a short, you reflect and you're like, man, I could have done this, and this better. It doesn't do any good to like marinate in it, but at least for me, I get so pumped to go and do the next one because I
Right.
learned from there. And so with Demonetize, like I wrote the script with all of everything I've learned that I wish I could have done differently with Bundy is all in this script. And like,
See, that's the joy. That's the joy. It's like
right.
it's like having your first kid, and then you
Hmm.
realize all the things you did wrong. So then you get to have a second kid, and you do all those things right. It's I'm
Yeah.
sorry to put that spin. Or it's like being a grandparent. Well, I screwed up with those, but these grandkids,
These
I've got
grandkids.
it down, man.
There you go. Oh, I
I
love
know some
that.
parents are gonna hate me for saying that. They really, really are. As far as your inspiration, as far now we've all
Mm,
got the things that we love as far as our inspirations go. So when it comes to
yeah.
horror itself, as
Mhm.
a fan, where do you draw from? What do you love?
Oh man. Okay. So I think the first movie that gave me the horror like horror bug or whatever, the horror obsession, is Halloween. Like,
Nice.
oh, I know that's a pretty common answer for a lot of people, but when I first like I was pretty young. I mean, I was young, but maybe not as young as most people, because in Utah, rated R movies are a sin, right? And you're not supposed to watch rated R movies. So, but I was, I think, 15 or 16 or something, getting rebellious. And we watched
Just going to the
Halloween.
underground, the Salt Lake City underground.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
S-
buddy, got some.
SLC punk, baby. Yeah. Um,
I can say fuck
there you go. There
you.
you go, dude. Oh man. Yeah, so yeah, Halloween was a big one, and like, I just loved the fact of like what was scary for me about it is that that felt plausible. Like I know that eventual like later Halloweens he kind of turns into this like mythos and paranormal almost like devil creature that can survive anything, but the
Right.
first one just really felt like, man, like this could legit happen. And it didn't help that like I think I lived like 3 or 4 miles away from a mental institution, so uh but yeah, it was oh, and the music, obviously John Carpenter kills it with his music every time, and it just complements it. Laurie Strode with Jamie Lee Curtis being just like an awesome final girl. So that was kind of the start for me. And I love Goosebumps, and that was kind of another big. That was probably the very first entry into horror. But then now, like I would say, modern, what I really draw from, I love Jordan Peele. I think
Nice.
his what I tried to do with Bundy, and maybe I could have done a little bit better. Uh, I mean, so I like what Jordan Peele does was I feel like he puts story first before like jump scares, and I think I could have added a little more, either jump scares or torture scenes or whatever. But I always like that about Jordan Peele is like he's gonna tell you a good story, when you see his films. They may not be as scary as other ones, but and then yeah, Hereditary is probably my all-time favorite current
Nice.
horror movie. And so yeah, to meet Ari was amazing. And then Mike Flanagan, he's another one. I haven't finished House of Usher yet, but I'm so pumped. We have like 2 episodes left, and
I won't spoil anything. I'm just saying.
oh
Okay, but you only have 2 episodes left, right? Okay,
yes,
because one thing I love about Flanagan, did you catch the Easter egg in episode 2 in the
are we
Mask of the
talking about
Red
the
Death?
mask?
Yes,
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
yes.
Yes.
I had a
So
Leo
nice.
moment when I saw that. I was like, I know that.
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
I pointed out to all my friends. It was like, we pause, rewind, look, there it is, and people like, holy shit! It's like,
nice.
oh, that got
Yeah,
me because
he's so good. Yeah.
we're huge Flanagan fans over here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I will defend it till I die, Doctor Sleep. Like, it is a movie
Yes,
that people are like, one, people don't even know about. Like, so many of my horror fans or horror friends, wow, why do I say friend? Horror friends will be like, "Oh, what's Doctor Sleep?" And I'm like, "Bro, it's a sequel to The Shining." And they're like, "Oh, why would they do a sequel?" And I'm like, "No, but it's Mike Flanagan, so it's like it's so good." Like, it's brutal, like that one scene with the kid in the baseball, like that is a
after
hard
what
scene to get through, but oh,
after what happened, yes, after what happened between King and Kubrick at the end of
mhm.
that, for Mike Flanagan to come in and
Oh,
smooth that over, for Stephen King to be like, okay, I
yeah.
can accept. For him to do that on this is just, I knew he was going to, I knew everything he touches turns to gold. And I knew it was going to be like,
Mhm.
ever since Absentia. And I, because one of my
Nice.
favorite little, I mean, that right there, Absentia is like inspiration for indie filmmakers. Like what
Yeah.
you can do with like literally like a two
Yep.
location, minimal characters, and a mastery of light and shadow. That's really
Mhm.
all that takes, and how you can tell a compelling and scary story. So
Absolutely.
love it, love it. I can't wait for you to finish it because
Oh, I'm so excited.
it's gonna
Maybe I'll
it's
do it
gonna get
tonight
you.
because you're getting me excited.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been amazing, and
Yeah.
I
It's
can't
been so
wait.
fun talking to you, man.
Oh, thank you very much, and can't wait for Demonetize. We're gonna keep our eyes open, and of course, everybody out there, definitely check out Bundy Manor. It is on Tubi and Plex. Likely you have Tubi, but it's also on Plex if you have that. So check it out. It's free. Go and watch it as soon as you can, so you get a taste of our guest Watson, Alex Watson's first feature film. He broke
Woo.
through. He made it happen. So definitely, a huge congratulations from all of
Thank
us,
you.
on that, because
Yes.
getting into the can, that's what it's about. So,
Oh, it
and
means a lot.
you've done
And
it, man.
I just want to say, like, that comes with a great cast, a great crew, and especially a crew. Like, I come from a crew background, and like, no offense against my cast, but you guys get a lot of the credit, cast. So crew, thank you a lot. And I will say, if you want to know about our next movie, you can go to demonetizemovie.com and you can sign up for updates. I don't know how much updates you're going to get for a little while because we're still on strike, or SAG is still on strike, but
Yes.
we'll see. We'll have to see.
Okay, but you were indie because this writer strike didn't really hurt me well because I'm
Yeah.
indie. I'm not union
Yeah.
yet. Maybe one day I will be, but
Yeah.
I'm still like, all right,
Yeah.
but hopefully
So,
hopefully the strike will be over, the SAG after strike, and hopefully they get what they're looking for, and
yes.
our fellow brothers and sisters who are in this industry are able to get the representation and the compensation that they deserve for their work.
Hell
So,
yeah.
because storytelling, man, this is what it's about.
Exactly. Exactly.
Definitely.
Hmm.
All right. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I've been here with Alex Watson, aka Watson. Thank you so much for joining me, bud. This has been an absolute pleasure. We're going to keep an eye on your exploding career. I'm expecting huge things. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, man. Anytime.
Absolutely. I have been JL. This has been another edition of the Week in Horror Front Row. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to check out our guest movie, Bundy Manor, over at Tubi and Plex. You can watch it there for free. And check out www.demonetize.com for updates on his upcoming feature. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you all next month.